Hello everyone, my name is AJ, and welcome back to An Arrangement Was Made, a Hazbin hotel fanfiction by myself. If you haven't seen the first two parts already, there is a playlist on my channel for you to go watch them in, or you can read it without having to listen to me say it. The original fanfiction will also be linked in the description, and I have some voice actors this time, so it should be a little nicer to listen to. Without further ado, let's get into it. Chapter 8. Last Day. One day left until Adam got here. One day left to get this hotel looking as nice as it possibly could. Charlie had gotten way in over her head on the first day and decided to try and redo all of the wallpaper in the entryway. To the shock and repulsion of the more mentally stable members of the hotel, there was an ungodly amount of black mold sitting behind the rotting red paper.
Ew, how long do you think we've been breathing that in?
Angel had commented. Charlie had spent the rest of the day with Nifty trying to scrub the mold out of the wood, but by the end of it, the entire room just looked worse than it had before. Charlie had ultimately decided to just hide the mess by putting up the new wallpaper. The second day she had spent much more wisely, getting rid of clutter, cleaning all the carpets, dusting everything, changing old light bulbs, the works. She managed to get the rest of her friends to help with this, though some helped far more than others. As always, Vaggie had been her rock through this. Vaggie was much better at keeping everyone organized, including Charlie, who got easily distracted with drawers that needed to be organized.
Why do we have to clean everything so thoroughly?
Pentious had asked.
Isn't it good enough already?
Well, I don't know very much about Adam, but the first time we met, he made it pretty clear he doesn't like how dirty it is down here. If there's anything we can do to make him more comfortable here, we should at least give it a try. Charlie gave Pentious a smile.
I don't see why we should try so hard to make him comfortable. He hates us.
Yeah, I know, but this is going to be a big change for him, and for all of us, really. Maybe if we make a really good first impression, he might start to like us. Maybe he'll realize that the exterminations were wrong and we won't need to keep this marriage going to keep him off our backs. Pentious looked at her like she was completely crazy.
If it makes you feel better, I will oblige. What would you like us to do?
Do you think you can fix the sink and bathroom of room 40?
Yes, madam.
He saluted her and started hissing orders at his egg minions. Charlie cringed internally a bit at that. She'd have to talk to him about the way he talked to his eggs sometime. Later, though, the eggs didn't seem to mind, so that was much lower on her list of priorities. It took all day to get everything clean. Charlie predicted that Adam would want to explore the hotel at some point, even if he wasn't initially interested in a tour. That meant every hallway and public bathroom needed attention. She didn't bother with any of the bedrooms, though, including empty ones. Everyone that stayed here locked their doors at night, and she could easily have Kiki lock all the empty bedrooms so he couldn't go in there. The storage rooms were a similar story. Just lock him out of every place she didn't want to clean. Thankfully, most of the hallways weren't too bad. Charlie went through them quickly dusting as she made her way up floor by floor. It was only when she got to the outside of the roof that she realized just how bad the hotel looked from the outside. There were so many problems it would be impossible to fix them all. Boards were often broken or missing, the stone was cracked and chipped, a train that was supposed to act as an elevator was completely unusable due to the horrid state of the tracks. Honestly, Charlie had forgotten about it. The third floor where the carousel sat was covered in large piles of trash. How did that much garbage even get up there? Most egregious was the ship that looked as if it had crashed backwards into the right side of the building. Charlie had no idea how that got there either. It had been that way since she bought it. Charlie had more than met her match. There was just no way to fix all this, especially not in 2 days. She would need her dad's magic in order to fix that much about her building, but she couldn't ask him for that. Even if he knew she was marrying Adam and was totally cool with it, she just couldn't ask him for that big of a favor. They weren't close enough for that yet. The outside would just have to go untouched. Day 3. Last day before Adam gets here. Charlie had been putting it off for long enough. It was time to set up Adam's room. Charlie stood in front of the door to room 40. She didn't know why she was hesitating so much. I guess it's because it makes it feel like it's actually real, she thought out loud to herself. She shook herself off and entered the room. Nifty had already cleaned the carpets and dusted everything in here, so all Charlie had to do was furnish and decorate. There was already a bed in the room, but upon further inspection, Charlie discovered that the sheets had been partially eaten by mice, and the mattress was completely ruined. She had to go out and buy a new mattress, which took far more time than it ought to have. Charlie regretted putting off this task for last. It should have been first. Thankfully, the rest of the furniture was practically ready to go. There was a wardrobe built into the wall, so no need to worry about that. Charlie set up a basket of logs and sticks for the fireplace. Despite hell usually being so hot, it still got really cold at night. It was like a desert. The rocks, sand, and concrete that covered the red landscape just didn't hold temperatures in at all. She changed out the red rug for a blue one. It clashed horribly with the burgundy walls, but she figured it might remind him of home. Heaven had been very blue. There's gotta be something more I can do here. This doesn't feel like enough. It was starting to sink in just how much of a stranger Adam was to her. All she had to go off of was assumptions. She was able to make many educated guesses about his philosophies and thought process, but she didn't know what he actually liked, only what he didn't like. That wasn't helpful. Heaven is in the sky. Maybe I should put up some pictures of clouds? That seemed like a good idea. Charlie went to her supply closet full of materials and grabbed everything she thought she might need. She strung up blue and yellow streamers around the entire room. She taped up a bunch of white balloons together to look like clouds. Oh, hell yeah, that looks even better than I expected. She stood up on a chair to get them taped onto the ceiling and also put them in a couple random places around the room. From what she remembered in heaven, there was often clouds just sitting on the ground. She taped a cross shape onto the window and put up drawings of birds and rainbows around the walls. Yes, this is cute. This is good. She admired her work for a little while longer before going downstairs. Now, time to make those cupcakes. Chapter 9. Moving in. Alistair and Vaggie were waiting outside the front door. Everyone in the hotel, except those who had met him, were curious what Adam would look like. They were also understandably a little nervous he might go on the attack if he met them all at once. Alistair and Vaggie were both responsible for the safety of the hotel and decided they would be the first to test the waters. If he were to try anything, Vaggie would be more than happy to gut him. Alistair was there more out of curiosity than anything else. He had always been curious about Adam since Charlie had first mentioned him. He had no desire to actually talk to the man, more just to see what exactly they were dealing with. He had obligations to Rosie this afternoon, and there would be plenty of time to talk to him later. I expect you to report back to me every 6 months.
Yes, ma'am.
Adam was resigned to his fate. Every attempt to fight it had backfired, and at this point he was just tired. He hadn't slept in the past couple days, too anxious. You are not to leave hell unless I call you back. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Now go. A portal to hell opened, and Adam stepped through. He had only 2 suitcases with him. The portal closed behind him the second his luggage was out, trapping him down there. The scent of death and charred flesh hit him like an express train. It smelled so much worse this close to the ground. Adam was usually a long-distance fighter and kept himself confined to the air and roofs. He promised himself to make some edits to his mask to keep the smell out.
Couldn't you put me closer to the door or something?
It was probably better that she put him at the bottom of the hill, actually, and gave him a moment to survey his surroundings and take note of the people around him before he actually went inside. Vaggie and a deer sinner stood outside the door. Beyond that, he could see the faces of a curious-looking snake sinner and an unsettling-looking dwarf girl. In the last day of freedom he had left to him, Adam had done a bit of research on the people currently living in this hotel. Finding information about sinners and the lives they lived before hell was challenging in heaven, but for an angel as high-ranked as Adam, there were some resources available. Adam approached the door. Vaggie was holding her spear, ready to attack at any minute. The other guy, Adam couldn't remember his name, had a more intimidating air to him. From Adam's limited research, he knew that one had been a prolific serial killer in his time. Looking at him made him uncomfortable. He hid his fear under a thick layer of silent wrath.
Hey, vagina! Nice to see you again.
It's Vaggie.
She growled.
So you're gonna let me in or what?
He smiled at her completely enraged expression.
Okay, listen here, Buster. You're not in charge here. You don't get to order me around anymore.
My bad. I thought you were the, bellhop.
He teased. He got another rageful inhale from her.
Alright, let's just get to the point. Me and Smiles over there are in charge of protecting this place. And just because we can't kill you, doesn't mean I still can't gut you if you even so much as think about raising a hand to anyone in that building, especially Charlie. Do you understand?
Yeah, whatever.
He walks past her into the hotel. Vaggie followed him a little closer than Adam would have liked. He could feel her eye practically burrowing into his very soul for any hint that he might get violent. He didn't like that. It smelled a lot better inside than it did outside. It smelled of must, wet paint, bleach, air freshener, and a bunch of scented candles that didn't go together. He quickly surveyed his surroundings. Snake dude, 5 eggs, cat with pants, ladybug with dwarfism, bar, ugly wallpaper, pillars, stairs, hallway that overlooked the entrance, ugly couch, fireplace. Porn star was missing. Probably at work or something.
Bad boy.
The smallest one squealed. She scurried out of the arms of the snake who had been trying to hold her back for her own safety. The speed at which she was able to scramble up Adam's robe right up to his face was enough to make anyone panic, but Adam was already on edge.
Yeah, get off me!
He reflexively grabbed her by the scruff and hurled her through the window before she could finish introducing herself. Vaggie reacted immediately. She attempted to stab Adam in the face. He caught her spear just below the blade. He leaned in close to her.
You don't want to know where that goes, honey.
He released her weapon. She quickly retreated a few steps back, but stayed in a fighting stance with her spear pointed at him.
So, where's my wife?
He felt slightly more comfortable now that he had established a sort of dominance.
Just call her by her name.
Well, where is she?
A smoke alarm announced that Charlie was currently in the kitchen. She came out of the kitchen coughing and waving smoke out of her face.
Nobody panic. Everything's fine, I promise.
She grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall and ran into the kitchen. Curious, Adam simply had no choice but to stand outside the kitchen doorway and see what was going on. The oven was vomiting smoke. Charlie sprayed inside of it and carefully pulled out the source of the flames, a pan of what used to be ribs.
Sorry, I was trying to make your favorite.
The oven ignited again. She tossed the entire can inside the oven and shut the door. The fire extinguisher promptly exploded. The fire appeared to be out for about half a second before the entire kitchen counter and the ribs erupted into flames in a way that should not have been possible. As much as Adam wanted to stay in a bad mood, he could not help but find the entire situation hilarious. It was cartoon levels of ridiculous. He heard Vaggie run upstairs to grab another fire extinguisher. Seemed like now was a good time to step in. He waved 2 fingers over the counter and the fire dispersed into nothing.
Thank you, I'm so sorry. I thought you weren't going to be here for another few hours.
Surprise!
He leaned back against the wall and absentmindedly poked at one of the rib bones. Vaggie came in about half a second later with several fire extinguishers. She looked around the room confused.
What happened to the fire and the smoke?
Oh, Adam put it out.
Vaggie made eye contact with him. He waved at her, a smug, jerkish look on his face. Vaggie glared at him and left to put the cans back where they belonged. Charlie felt a little awkward. The tension between those two was oozing like puss. This was going to be a difficult adjustment.
How did you set an entire kitchen on fire?
Well, I quadrupled the heat on the recipe I found in hopes that it would cook 4 times as fast. Guess not.
That made Adam laugh more.
Yeah, I did that too. Ruined a lot of dinners that way.
Live and learn, right?
Yeah.
I didn't bring the cupcakes if you want one. I was hoping we could have dinner first, but
She gestured to the charred meat.
I don't think that's edible anymore.
I would love a cupcake!
Charlie pulls a plate of cupcakes out of the fridge.
Come on.
She takes the cupcakes out to the main area and places them on the table they had set up. Adam follows close behind her. Pentious had helped Nifty back inside and was currently picking glass out of her face. Alistair shadows and made quick work of putting a tarp over top of the broken window to keep the smell out until they could get more glass to replace it.
What happened to my window?
Charlie asked, concerned.
Don't worry about it.
Adam responded. Pentious shot him a dark look.
That angel threw Miss Nifty through it.
Charlie looked at Adam. He shrugged.
Adam, why would you do that?
Just get in my face! I got spooked!
That doesn't mean you could just throw people through windows. She could have gotten hurt. I liked it.
Nifty giggled. Charlie's face fell to that of extreme disappointment at Nifty's words. She pinched the bridge of her nose. Lilith used to do that.
Nifty, that's not helping.
She looked back up at Adam. Don't do it again.
No promises.
Don't do it again.
Honey, as long as no one touches me, we won't have a problem.
Charlie didn't seem particularly happy with that response, but it would have to do for now. Adam took a cupcake. Each one was frosted white with either blue, yellow, or light gray sprinkles. Each one had 2 small cookies in the shape of bird wings carefully positioned on either side of the pastry. Charlie had clearly put a lot of work into these. They were cute, though Adam would never admit that. He removed the cream-colored paper and took a bite. It had a hint of sourness to it that seemed familiar.
Lime?
He guessed. She shook her head. Close. Lemon.
Ah,
He took another bite. They were pretty good.
you know lemons didn't exist when I was alive.
Really?
Yeah, lemons don't occur naturally. They're a mix between citron and a bitter orange.
You're making that up.
No, it's true. Look it up.
Charlie pulled out her phone and started Googling. Oh my goodness, you're right. She scrolled farther down. Oranges aren't real either? Pentious looked curiously over her shoulder. She scrolled farther down in the article, absorbing all the information like a sponge. Adam had inadvertently sent her down the hybrid fruit rabbit hole that she will not emerge from for a good hour or 2 without intervention.
Peaches and nectarines are the same thing.
Seems like Pentious will be right next to her for all of that. Adam took another cupcake.
So, where's our room?
He asked before taking another bite. That broke Charlie out of the information whirlpool she'd been trapped in. Come again?
Our room? Where is it?
Oh, how to say this without being rude. Your room is number 40. Come on, I'll show you. She took one of Adam's suitcases and left her phone with Pentious. He'd report back to her when she got back. Adam took his other bag and followed her. So they weren't going to sleep in the same room. Adam felt a little conflicted about that. On one hand, he was relieved to have his own space. On the other, the fact that Charlie was so openly not going to treat him like a husband made him a little upset. He had expected that they would stay in the same room, even if they were in different beds, to at least keep up appearances. It made Adam nervous. If she was so public with all of her friends about not loving or respecting him, how would she treat him behind closed doors? All the feelings of safety he had when the kitchen was on fire were now gone. He remembered now where he was, why, and what his place was relative to everyone else. He would not be respected, loved, or safe here. We're here. She opened the door and went inside. Adam followed. He kept at least 5 feet between them just in case. He surveyed the decorations. They had a similar style to the cupcakes, over the top adorable and heaven-themed. If Adam was in a better mood, he might have found this endearing, but right now he was looking for things to be offended about to confirm his biases.
Are you mocking me?
Charlie immediately went into backpedaling mode. No, of course not. I was hoping to make you feel at home.
Well, I don't. I feel further from home than you can even imagine.
He went over to the window and angrily stared out at the city. The view was terrible. Smoke from several large fires billowed into the air, leaving large clouds of smog covering the whole city. The red sky was subtly stressful to look at. Numerous billboards and signs advertising all kinds of sinful activities made it even worse. The only 2 things that were at all pleasant to look at were the Heaven Embassy and heaven itself. It was only the gate to heaven, but even still it was the only thing worth looking at. If Sarah hadn't ordered him to stay down there, it would be so easy to just fly up there and go back home. Is there anything I could do to make it better?
You could divorce me. That would work.
I can't do that.
Then, no. There's nothing you can do to make it better. Get out.
She stepped closer. Adam!
Get out!
His feathers flared up threateningly. Charlie made the smart choice not to provoke him any further. She looked over her shoulder one last time before closing the door and leaving him to himself. Maggie was waiting just outside the door. She had been listening in closely just in case Adam decided to attack. She didn't like the idea of Charlie ever being alone with him for even a minute.
So, how'd it go?
Charlie sighed. Not well. I wish I understood what I did to make him upset.
Nothing. You didn't do anything wrong.
Maggie offered Charlie her hand. Charlie took it and followed her through the hallway.
Adam is just like this. He'll never like you no matter what you do, so don't even waste your time on him.
That didn't make Charlie feel much better. Her brows crinkled. Maggie noticed and changed her approach.
Hey, that doesn't mean you can't be happy. Let him make himself miserable. Just focus on you, okay?
Maggie put her hand on Charlie's shoulder and smiled at her. Charlie gave her a soft smile back. Thanks, Maggie. Oh, right. Almost forgot. She let out a sad laugh.
You can still say I love you to your friends, right?
The realization hit like a bullet to the back of the head. Instant good mood. Yeah, I totally can. I love you.
I love you too.
Let's go get that kitchen clean. She ran off, tugging Maggie right along with her. Adam sat in his windowsill, still staring up at the gateway to freedom. It was right there. It was so close, but he just couldn't get to it. He had every ability to go home, everything he needed except free will. Was it fair? Everyone else got free will, why not him? Soon he couldn't bear to look at it anymore. He didn't want to look at the rest of his room either. Every stupid decoration that Charlie had put up was like a little bit of salt in a fresh wound. He went to his bed and pulled the blankets over his head so he didn't have to see anymore. He didn't take his helmet or robes off. He didn't feel comfortable leaving his face exposed in this god-awful place, let alone any other part of his body. A few tears tried to squeak out, confirming his fear about letting his face out. Even if his crying couldn't be seen, he still willed it to stop. Don't cry, Adam. You're too old to cry. Chapter 10. First full day. It was the next day. Adam hadn't woken up until the early afternoon, and he was still tired. Several days with no sleep had really done a number on him, and he felt awful. The nightmares didn't help. He couldn't remember what they were, but they certainly weren't pleasant whatever they were. He looked out at the state of his new room. It seemed even more gaudy now that he was waking up in it. He had half a mind to tear everything down and throw it out, but that seemed like too much work. His head hurt. He laid in bed for a good 15 minutes, staring up at the ceiling before he finally got up. He brushed the wrinkles out of his cloak and readjusted his mask before going to the door. A note had been slipped under it. He picked it up.
Hi, Adam. We had pizza for dinner last night. I was going to call you, but I didn't want to wake you up. We saved some leftovers in the fridge for you. They'll have your name on them. Hope you slept well. Charlie.
Adam wasn't sure how to feel about that. Probably best not to think about it too hard. He dropped the note on his bedside table and left the room. He listened carefully to make certain there was no one sneaking up on him. The less he could interact with the other people living here, the better. From the research he'd done before arriving here, not a single one of them was worth knowing. Vaggie was the only one here who wasn't irredeemable, at least not completely. She put her mercy in the wrong place, but she wasn't evil. He had hoped that a few years in hell would remind her why all sinners must die, but it had backfired. Fine by him. She wanted to stay in hell? Then she deserved to be here just as much as any other sinner. Enablers were almost as bad as perpetrators in his opinion, especially when they're supposed to be the ones delivering justice. Still, though, he hoped that perhaps he could still help her return to the light, in a sense. He had to hope that. Life here would be very lonely here if he didn't have at least one other angel around. Adam didn't run into anyone on the way to the kitchen. He didn't hear anyone in there, so he entered. The mess from last night had been cleaned competently enough. There were some minor scorch marks on the counter and the wall, but they could be easily painted over. The oven was a very different story. What used to be a white appliance was now charred entirely black. The glass was cracked and there were dents from where the fire extinguisher shrapnel had exploded. There was an apple-shaped, pale green sticky note on the top that read,
Out of order. We'll buy a new one. Sorry.
Written in swirly, feminine handwriting that clearly belonged to Charlie. There was a face doodle next to it that was just a couple dots in a cat-like mouth with the tongue sticking out next to the apology. What a loser. He found the pizza in the bottom at the back of one of the drawers. It took him forever to find it. Who the heck puts fresh leftovers that out of sight? It would have been a lot harder to find if the fridge was fully stocked. Whoever was in charge of shopping really needed to go. All that was in there was some limp vegetables, lunch meat of questionable age, other people's leftovers, and some yogurt.
Becky!
He had forgotten how petty she could be. She had been cartoonishly petty towards the other girls when she first became an exorcist. She and Lute had that in common. He thought that he had taught her better than that, but it looks like she just learned to hide that part of herself better. That would be an issue. Oh well, he got through Lute's rebellious phase, he could get through hers, even if hers came much later in life. There were 3 pieces left for him. That wasn't quite enough, but this was hell pizza. In heaven, almost everything was good for you, or at least neutral. He expected the food down here would be more fattening and overall less nutritious. He took the entire resealable freezer bag with him. He didn't bother to heat it up. In order to do that, he'd have to get out a plate, which meant doing dishes, and also using the microwave. He'd never used one of those things before, and frankly, he didn't like the idea of them. Ovens made sense to him. He'd watched those things evolve from stone enclosures with fires underneath into what they were today. They were still recognizable. Microwaves, though, they used f***ing invisible ways to cook shit. That was something he didn't understand or like, and he wasn't planning on learning anything new right now. Pizza was plenty good cold anyway, sometimes even better. Adam left the kitchen and started up the stairs. He heard people talking in the lounge. He looked over the railing and saw Charlie doing some redemption exercises with Angel, Pentious, and Vaggie. Angel looked like he was over this a long time ago. Pentious seemed to be somewhat enjoying himself, and Vaggie was just happy to be there. Charlie noticed Adam and waved at him. Adam half-heartedly waved back at her and went back to his room. He locked the door behind himself and set his food on the bedside table. He dug through his luggage and found his computer and headphones, which he brought to his bed. He fashioned his blankets into a makeshift nest, made himself comfy, pulled the blankets over his head like a hood, which was not easy because of his horns, and started to eat while he looked for something to watch. Adam was relieved he could still access Heaven's version of YouTube from down here, but was infuriated that he no longer had admin permissions over his own account. His ability to comment was gone, every single video he'd ever made was privated, and his account name and profile had been changed. It was the same story with all his other social media accounts, everything either private, unlisted, or deleted. His ability to post, comment, share, or DM anyone, gone. He wasn't sure whether that was better or worse. The ability to see his friends and what they were up to, but unable to interact with a single one of them. It wasn't that different than when someone was dead in a way. Able to see what their loved ones were up to, but unable to interact with the living world. Although, to be honest, that wasn't much different than his usual relationship with his eldest heavenly son. Adam hadn't exactly died, but he went through something similar after the death of his wife. He found a video essay from a creator he liked about something he never heard about and clicked on it. It was interesting enough to keep him entertained for at least an hour before he would scroll mindlessly on social media for a good 30 minutes, and then come back to it. Charlie was starting to get a little worried. Adam hadn't come out of his room since she saw him go to the kitchen. She didn't think he'd take it this hard at all.
You could divorce me. That would work.
Was he regretting his decision already? If he really didn't want to be here, why didn't he leave? He could have just said no. She didn't understand him at all, and she wanted answers. More importantly, though, she wanted him to be comfortable. This would be a miserable experience for both of them if they couldn't get along. She knocked gently on the door. She didn't get a response.
Adam, can I talk to you?
Go away.
Please? I'm sorry if I offended you last night. She didn't get a response. She would need to try a different approach.
The guests and I were going to go to a restaurant as a team-building exercise. Would you like to come?
No.
Do you want me to bring you something back then?
Fine. Just make sure it's vegan.
That caught Charlie completely off guard. She almost laughed. Vegan?
Or fucking whatever it's called. Vegetarian. The one where you don't eat meat. But you eat like fucking eggs and shit.
Charlie blinked a few times while she processed that. Adam was vegetarian? But the ribs.
Okay.
She'd ask him about it later.
I'll be back in an hour, alright?
Is everyone going with you?
Yes, it'll be just you and the pets.
Yeah, the other pets.
What did you say? I didn't catch that.
What pets?
My cat Kiki, Razzle and Dazzle, and Angel's pig Fat Nuggets.
Charlie heard Adam snicker from the other side of the door.
That's a good name for a pig.
Yeah. Do you want anything else while I'm out?
Soap. There wasn't any in my bathroom.
Oh, whoops. I'm sorry. I knew I was forgetting something. Sorry about that. I'll see you later, okay?
Okay.
Charlie started down the hallway. Okay, this was still fixable. He hadn't been nearly as obnoxious as he was the first time she had met him. Maybe he was trying, in his own weird, antisocial way. Or maybe it was just the change of circumstances that was doing it. Now that Charlie thought about it, she had been in such a rush to tell him about the hotel that any stalling of that conversation from anyone would have been frustrating to her. Maybe she was misremembering how frustrating he had been?
And I was like, you don't want drama. Do you even know who I am? I'm f***ing Adam. I'm the original. All of the descended from me.
Nope, never mind. He was definitely acting weird. Maybe something about being married again had something to do with it. Charlie had heard once that people sometimes change when they were married. Maybe she could change him. Maybe it would be like the movies after all. Charlie gathered up her friends and helped everyone to get ready to leave.
Charlie, are you sure it's a good idea to leave Adam here by himself?
Vaggie had asked her.
Of course. He lives here now, Vaggie, and I trust him.
Maybe I should stay behind and make sure he doesn't burn the place down or steal anything.
Well, now that sounded like a bad idea.
You worry too much, Vaggie. It'll be fine. Come on, and I still need my bodyguard with me.
She ruffled Vaggie's hair. Vaggie blushed. That seemed to convince her enough to drop the subject. She went about helping Charlie herd everyone outside and making sure they all stayed in a group. Charlie was the last one out the door. She sensed eyes on her and looked up. She saw Adam peeking around the corner of the upstairs hallway. He had been watching the entire interaction. She couldn't read his expression. She smiled and waved at him before leaving the building, locking the door behind her. So she was cheating on him. Adam had suspected as much. She was Lilith and Lucifer's daughter, and the apple doesn't fall far from the forbidden tree. He wouldn't be surprised if those two adulterers hadn't even taught her about the concept of monogamy, let alone to do it. What did surprise him was how public she was being with her own adultery. At least her parents had enough sense to try and conceal it. At first. She was blatantly flirting with Vaggie in front of all her friends without so much as a passing thought about whether or not Adam saw. Was she going to do that in public too? Outside the hotel where any stranger could see? Adam had never expected her to love him. He had gone into this expecting her and Vaggie to still be together. But did she have to go and disrespect him in front of so many people? She didn't care about his dignity at all. He just hoped that Hell's Media didn't know he was living here. Maybe if he just never went outside ever again, he could hold on to that little piece of his pride. He stomped down the hallways to walk off the stress. It also had the added benefit of familiarizing himself with the space if ever there was an emergency. The overly detailed, ugly red and gold wallpaper seemed to have been put up on every single wall. That seemed weird to him. In a house with so many flickering lights and old pipes, it seemed like a foolish waste of money to invest so much into wallpaper. Wallpaper wasn't exactly cheap. It would have been cheaper to just paint everything, especially if you picked mist tints. Then they could have put the majority of their resources into actually making this place a decent living space. It was like painting a mausoleum white, like that made the inside any less rotten. The hotel was huge. There was a staggering 10 floors. 14 if you counted the airship, radio tower, and both levels of the pirate ship. Yeah, the hotel wasn't that long or wide, but come on! 10 floors? And a minimum of 4 rooms to each floor with the exception of ground level? Charlie couldn't really be so delusional as to think that she could really fill all of these rooms, let alone fix the sinners that would inhabit them. This was just ridiculous. Most of the rooms that Adam attempted to open were locked. Made sense. Only the restrooms that were on each floor were open to him. The door to the pirate ship, like all bedrooms and storage closets, was again locked. This one was only locked from the inside, though, which meant that if Adam wanted to, he could easily pick or break the lock without damaging the door. Later, though, there was only one room he was really interested in seeing right now. Charlie's room had not been on the 2nd floor like the rest of her friends, and that made him curious. He found her bedroom on the 9th floor. There were no other bedrooms on this level. Adam didn't hesitate to enter the unlocked room. Invasion of privacy or not, she was his wife, and he felt he had a right to investigate if he wished. Adam already had enough to prove that the two still had feelings for each other. What he wanted to know was if they were still staying in the same room. Was that why Charlie had put him in a separate room? So she could keep sleeping with his ex-soldier without the hassle of kicking him out first? He found a few belongings that Vaggie had forgotten when she moved rooms. But that didn't really help. Vaggie had always been a minimalist when Adam had known her, so the presence of any of her items, or lack thereof, didn't help much. Truthfully, Adam didn't really know what he was looking for. With a sigh, he put everything back roughly where he found it and went back to his own room. He had been hoping that he could play oblivious for at least a month before this fight inevitably came up, but Charlie apparently had other plans. He summoned his guitar and sat in his windowsill. He stared up at the faint light of heaven's gates as he began to lightly pluck at the strings. It had barely been 28 hours, and already he was willing to give up far more than he was comfortable with admitting to go back home.